look ready and keep your eyes shut!
They are daring. They are reckless, mysterious, and legendary. In 1981, Raiders of the Lost Ark stormed onto the screen and introduced the world to Indiana Jones, a whip-cracking archaeologist who redefined adventure movies forever. Directed by Steven Spielberg, produced by George Lucas, and carried by Harrison Ford's rugged charm, the film became an instant classic. It was equal parts adventure, globe-trotting epic, and supernatural wonder. But behind the dusty tombs, Nazi villains, and rolling boulders was a production filled with bizarre accidents, dangerous stunts, near disasters, and moments that blurred the line between fiction and reality. Raiders was just as perilous behind the camera as it was on screen. Here are 25 legendary facts about Raiders of the Lost Ark that prove this adventure was stranger, riskier, and more iconic than anyone expected. Number 1. The role was almost not Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford is now inseparable from Indiana Jones, but he was not the first choice. George Lucas resisted casting him because he worried Ford would become his prominent go-to star after Star Wars. The role was first offered to Tom Selleck, who actually filmed a test reel in full Indy gear. But Selleck was trapped in his TV contract for Magnum PI, and the network refused to let him go. At the very last minute, the part fell into Ford's hands. What makes it stranger is how fate seemed to push Ford into the fedora. Ford was not eager to play another rugged hero after Han Solo, yet his natural weariness and quiet charisma gave Indy a lived-in quality that no one else could match. Even Spielberg admitted that Selleck might have made Indy too polished, too clean-cut, while Ford brought a rough edge that felt dangerous and unpredictable. The eerie part is that Selleck's Magnum PI later filmed an Indiana Jones parody episode, complete with whip and fedora, as if he was haunted by the role that slipped away. Looking back, it feels like destiny chose Ford, and without that twist of timing, the most legendary adventurer in cinema history might have looked shockingly different. Number 2. The boulder chase was terrifyingly real. The opening scene where Indy runs from the giant rolling boulder is one of the most iconic in film history. The boulder was not just a prop, it was a massive practical effect weighing hundreds of pounds. Spielberg insisted Ford do most of the running himself. On some takes, the boulder came within feet of hitting him. Crew members admitted their hearts stopped watching him sprint for his life. That sense of genuine danger is why the scene still feels terrifying decades later. Number 3. The snake pit was crawling with thousands of real snakes. The Well of Souls scene required thousands of snakes. The crew initially gathered around 2,000, but Spielberg looked at the pit and said it was not nearly enough. They eventually wrangled over 7,000 snakes, including deadly cobras. To protect Ford from a venomous strike, a pane of glass was placed between him and the cobra. You can still spot the reflection if you look closely. The eerie truth is that crew members were constantly bitten, and anti-venom had to be kept on set. Number 4. Ford did his own stunts while injured. Harrison Ford wanted Indiana Jones to feel real, so he insisted on doing most of his own stunts. That meant climbing, leaping, and dragging himself through dangerous setups that most stars would hand off to professionals. During the brutal truck chase sequence, Ford was thrown against the vehicle and tore a ligament in his knee. Any other actor would have been rushed into surgery. Ford? He refused. Instead, he iced his knee between takes, limped back onto the set, and kept filming. His grimaces and stiff movements on screen were not carefully rehearsed acting choices. They were the raw expressions of a man running on sheer adrenaline and pain. Spielberg later said Ford's toughness was almost unnerving because he seemed willing to risk breaking himself for the sake of a performance. Crew members joked that Indiana Jones and Harrison Ford were bleeding together by the end of each day. The strange part is how that injury ended up shaping the character. Indy's movements in the chase look rougher, heavier, and less polished, which made him seem even more human. Instead of a flawless superhero, he became a battered archaeologist, barely surviving by grit. What started as an accident became one of the reasons Indiana Jones felt so authentic. It was not just stunts, it was scars. Number 5. The iconic whip took weeks to master. Indiana Jones's bullwhip is one of cinema's most recognizable weapons, but Ford had to train for weeks to handle it. He practiced daily until he could snap it with precision, sometimes cutting props in half or knocking items out of crew members' hands. The whip was so dangerous that handlers kept a first aid kit nearby for inevitable accidents. Ford himself admitted he gave himself welts learning the skill. Number 6. The gun scene was changed by illness. One of the funniest and most famous moments in Raiders came about by accident. In the Cairo marketplace, Indy faces off with a swordsman who shows off elaborate moves. The script originally called for a long fight, but Ford was suffering from dysentery and was too sick to perform the stunt. He pulled out his revolver and shot the swordsman instead. The crew laughed so hard that Spielberg kept it in. That single improvised change became one of the most legendary moments ever filmed. Number 7. The airplane scene nearly killed Ford. In the fight scene around the Nazi airplane, Ford was dragged under the plane and injured his leg when it rolled over him. Only quick thinking by the stunt team saved him from being crushed. He escaped with bruises, but the risk was real. The spinning propellers in that sequence were also dangerously close. One wrong step and the scene could have turned deadly. Number 8. Karen Allen was almost set on fire. During the bar fight in Nepal, Karen Allen's costume actually caught fire from a stunt explosion. Crew members rushed to extinguish the flames before she was seriously injured. She later said the terror you see in her face during those moments was not entirely acting. Number 9. The sound effects were bizarrely real. The unforgettable sounds in Raiders were made from odd sources. The crack of Indy's whip came from recordings of gunshots blended with animal growls. The sound of snakes slithering was actually created by running fingers through a cheese casserole. Even the boulder's rumble came from a car rolling down a gravel driveway. The bizarre mix of ordinary sounds created an eerie and unforgettable soundscape. Number 10. Spielberg hid Easter eggs from Star Wars. George Lucas could not resist inserting references to Star Wars. In the Well of Souls, hieroglyphics of R2-D2 and C-3PO can be spotted on the walls. To many fans, it was a strange merging of universes, as if Indiana Jones and Luke Skywalker shared a hidden connection. Number 11. The truck drag scene was brutal. Ford performed the famous stunt of being dragged behind a moving truck. The sequence was inspired by old westerns and serials, but Ford's version was far more dangerous. He was actually pulled along the dirt and rocks at high speed, leaving him scraped and bruised. Spielberg said Ford's determination made the scene far more thrilling than a stunt double ever could. Number 12. The map room was lit by the sun. The mystical map room scene was shot with careful precision. The beam of sunlight that revealed the location of the Ark was achieved by cutting holes in the set roof and using massive studio lights. The strange detail is that the crew had to measure the angle of the light like real archaeologists to make it believable. Number 13. Everyone got sick in Tunisia. Filming in Tunisia took a toll on the cast and crew. Almost everyone was struck with food poisoning and dysentery, except for Spielberg, who survived by eating only canned SpaghettiOs he had brought from the United States. The illness left actors drained, yet it gave the film's sweat-drenched look a strange authenticity. Number 14. The Ark was really heavy. The Ark of the Covenant prop was built from solid materials and weighed far more than expected. Extras playing the Nazi soldiers struggled to carry it during filming. Some collapsed under its weight, making the strain in their performances very real. Number 15. The melting faces were real wax. The horrific climax where Nazi faces melt was achieved with wax models of the actors. They were slowly melted with heat lamps and filmed in time-lapse. The footage was then sped up to create the shocking effect. The eerie truth is that it looked so real that audiences fainted during early screenings. Number 16. The monkey was almost uncontrollable. The capuchin monkey that gives the Nazi salute was one of the hardest actors to direct. Trainers struggled for days to get the shot. Eventually, they smeared honey on a glass and waited for the monkey to reach upward, then dubbed the salute in post-production. The odd detail is that the monkey reportedly bit crew members throughout filming. Number 17. The airplane exploded too early. In the desert fight sequence, Indiana Jones battles a hulking Nazi mechanic near a spinning airplane. The plan was for the plane to catch fire and then explode in a carefully timed blast, but movie sets rarely go as planned. The explosion went off earlier than expected, a fireball ripping across the stand before the crew was fully clear. Stunt performers were almost caught in the flames, and the heat was so intense it singed the hair of crew members standing far back. What makes it stranger is Spielberg's reaction. Instead of halting production in panic, he watched the playback and decided it was too good to waste. The raw chaos, the unexpected burst of fire, gave the scene a terrifying unpredictability that made it feel real. So he left it exactly as it was. Some crew members even swore the desert wind shifted at the last second, carrying the flames just wide enough to avoid serious injury, as if fate itself stepped in to save the day. It added an eerie layer to the film's reputation for cursed luck, where near disasters somehow turned into iconic moments on screen. Number 18. The film faced studio doubt. Executives at Paramount feared Raiders would flop. Adventure serials were considered outdated, and the budget seemed too risky. Spielberg and Lucas had to fight to keep creative control. Ironically, the film became the highest-grossing movie of 1981 and launched one of the most successful franchises in history. Number 19. The whip left lasting scars. Harrison Ford insisted on mastering Indiana Jones's bullwhip, believing it was as essential to the character as the fedora. But the whip was not just a prop, it was a weapon with a mind of its own. During rehearsals and even while filming, it lashed back unpredictably, striking Ford's arm, shoulder, and once even curling across his back. He carried the welts for weeks, and some scars remained long after shooting ended. Ford laughed it off in interviews, saying that Indiana Jones looked rugged partly because of makeup and partly because of his own clumsy whip work. But there was something strange about it too. Crew members swore the whip had an uncanny way of snapping toward him even when handled correctly, almost like it was alive. At one point, a trainer remarked that the whip likes blood after it split Ford's skin yet again. That eerie unpredictability added to the legend. When you watch Indy snap the whip with precision on screen, you are seeing not just acting, but Ford's battle to tame an unruly tool that seemed determined to fight him back. Number 20. The opening spider scene was real. Alfred Molina's very first film role threw him straight into a waking nightmare. In the opening of Raiders, dozens of tarantulas were dumped across his body. They were not rubber props or animatronics, but living, crawling spiders with minds of their own. Molina had to lie perfectly still as they scuttled over his face and arms, their legs brushing against his mouth and eyes. At first, the spiders would not move. They just sat there, eerily still, which Spielberg felt ruined the effect. The animal wrangler explained why. The spiders were all male, and they had no reason to get agitated. So the crew added one female tarantula into the mix. Suddenly, the males became restless, swarming over Molina in a frenzy. The actor admitted he was petrified, his heart pounding as the spiders grew more aggressive. For the crew, it was horrifying and mesmerizing at once. What should have been a simple, creepy, crawly scene turned into something disturbingly real. On screen, it feels like pure nightmare fuel. Behind the scenes, it was a bizarre mating ritual playing out on the body of a terrified actor. Number 21. The hat became a legend. Indiana Jones's fedora became one of the most iconic costume pieces in cinema. To make it believable, costume designer Deborah Nadoolman rubbed dirt and dust into the hat so it looked lived in. Ford loved it so much that he kept it after filming, wearing it in later sequels. Number 22. The truck chase changed action movies. The desert truck chase is not just a set piece. It is often called the greatest action sequence ever filmed. Spielberg meticulously studied westerns, Kurosawa samurai battles, and classic car chases like Bullitt, then wove them all together into something that felt both timeless and terrifyingly new. The stunt team rehearsed for weeks, with Harrison Ford himself clinging to trucks, sliding beneath moving vehicles, and leaping between bumpers in blistering heat. What makes it strange is how improvisational it became. When one of the trucks broke down, Spielberg rewrote shots on the spot, creating new angles that actually heightened the tension. Some stunts were so dangerous that crew members quietly prayed before takes, convinced someone might not walk away. The result was so visceral that even today directors from George Miller to Christopher Nolan cite it as the gold standard of action choreography. In fact, the highway scene in Mad Max Fury Road and the semi-truck flip in The Dark Knight both owe their DNA to Indy's Desert Gauntlet. The eerie part? Spielberg later admitted he never thought the sequence would work. He filmed it almost as an experiment, half expecting it to fall apart. Instead, it became one of the defining action scenes in history, a chase so raw and relentless it almost feels cursed, as if cinema itself demanded it exist. Number 23. A real cobra spit at the crew. The Well of Souls scene was already nerve-wracking, with thousands of snakes slithering over the floor, but one cobra took things further. During filming, it reared back and spit venom directly at the camera crew. The venom splattered across the lens, a shocking, real moment that Spielberg decided to keep in the film. What makes it even stranger is that the cobra seemed almost aware of its audience, striking not at the actors but at the people behind the camera. Crew members later admitted the incident rattled them more than anything else on set. The protective glass shield saved the cameraman's eyesight, but the venom left tiny pitted marks on the lens itself, like scars from the encounter. It was a chilling reminder that the snakes were not trained performers, but unpredictable predators. The Well of Souls may have been a movie set, but in that moment it became a real tomb filled with living danger. Some crew even joked afterward that the cobra wanted a close-up. Number 24. The Nazi deaths were censored in some countries. The violent supernatural deaths of the Nazis at the film's climax were considered too gruesome for some international audiences. Certain cuts of the film trimmed the face melting and head explosions. Still, the images became legendary and haunted audiences for decades. Number 25. The film redefined adventure cinema. Raiders of the Lost Ark did not just succeed, it reshaped Hollywood. It revived interest in pulp adventures, set a new bar for action filmmaking, and created a hero who was flawed, funny, and human. Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones became as immortal as James Bond, proving that sometimes the strangest risks create the greatest legends. Bonus facts for the true adventurers. The Ark had its own curse. Some crew members whispered that the Ark prop itself was cursed. During shooting, several people who worked closely around it got sudden illnesses, fainting spells, or mysterious accidents. One electrician even swore he saw a flash of light inside the closed prop when no bulbs were on. Spielberg joked it was just movie magic leaking out, but others refused to go near it without crossing themselves first. A lost ending script still haunts Hollywood. Among the stranger early drafts, one ending had Indy opening the Ark and being transported into a surreal vision of time itself, glimpsing wars, ruins, and even his own grave. The studio thought it was too unsettling, and it was buried in the archives. To this day, fans who've read pieces of the script describe it as eerie, dreamlike, and almost more horror than adventure. Raiders of the Lost Ark was never just an adventure. It was a celebration of daring, of facing danger, and of finding wonder in the shadows of history. Its survival and success remind us that sometimes chaos and risk forge the greatest legends. If you want more strange and weird movie stories, please like and subscribe. After all, what is normal anyway? This is Strange Flick Facts, where we uncover the bizarre truths behind your favorite films.